This is Yair, Davidiy speaking to you from the land of Israel. Today we're about to discuss the kings of Denmark, the Hebrew kings of Denmark. We find the tribe of Dan, the Israelite tribe of Dan, to have been present amongst the Danish people. And the Danes are part of the lost 10 tribes. The lost 10 tribes comprise that section of the Israelite nation that separated from the Jews, separated from Judah, was conquered by the Assyrians, taken into exile, lost awareness of their Hebrew identity. But they remained, physically they remained, and they had a task to play according to the Bible. They had to become like the Gentiles, to go down to the level of the Gentiles, to evolve upward and develop themselves and bring the rest of the world to a higher level from inside. This is what we believe in, this is what we understand, and we have spoken of this. We have shown from biblical passages that such was the case, and we have been able to trace Israelite tribes to specific nations, specific peoples amongst Western Europeans and their offshoots in North America, Australia, New Zealand and elsewhere. And this is the truth. This is something that we need to know in our times, because it is pertinent to what will happen to us. It is pertinent to what the Western world needs to know. It is pertinent to what the people in question need to be aware of, and that each and every one of us has to take to heart and has to do what they can to improve themselves and to improve their families and to come to meet the future. And this message of ours is going out to the peoples as a whole. We cannot say to each and every individual in the West that you are certainly, listen to Western tribes, you are certainly of Israelite ancestry. We can say that based on the evidence, based on statistical probability, it's a good chance that you are, or you are not. There's a good chance that you are, in certain situations, you are descend from the lost tribes of Israel. And even so, you have an obligation along those lines, or along certain lines defined by the Bible, but even if you are not and you belong to peoples that may be identified as having a considerable proportion of Israelites amongst them, we may say that you too are part of the tribe in question, and you too participate in what is involved in this. And part of our proofs concerning that specific peoples belong to the tribe of Israel involve kings and involve monarchies. This prophecies concerning the forefathers of the Israelite nation, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, they spoke of kings. We find in Genesis 17:6, to Abraham, I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you. And God said to Abraham, that in Genesis 17:15, then God said to Abraham, as for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name, and I will bless her, and also give you a son by her. Then I will bless her, and she will be a mother of nations, kings of peoples shall be from her. So in Genesis 35:10, to Jacob, had Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, to Jacob, at 35:10 it says, and God said to him, your name Jacob, your name shall not be called Jacob anymore, but Israel shall be your name. Israel was originally called Jacob, and he was renamed, he was to be called Israel. So he called his name Israel, and so God said to him, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply, a nation and a company of nations shall proceed from you, and kings shall come from your body. And we have shown in a previous talk how the Hebrew original message in the Hebrew language, and also according to a foremost rabbinical commentator, and also according to the Netziv, a foremost rabbinical commentator who lived more than 150 years ago, that this message was in effect saying that there would be two separate sections. Already from the beginning, the forefathers were told that their seed from their offspring would come two separate segments of the people. One section would comprise a body of people, that is Judah, would be one entity. Another section would comprise 10 separate sections. And according to the text of the Bible, amongst these 10 separate sections would be kings over some of the 10 nations, not all over some of the 10 nations. And these kings were to be ruling over their peoples parallel to one another. And this is what was prophesied, and this is what we find amongst Western Europeans. And one of the nations in which we find kings, monarchs, is Denmark. And other Scandinavian nations, we also find kings in Sweden and in Norway. Norway identified with the tribe of Naphtali, Sweden with the tribe of Gad, and Dan with the tribe of, and Denmark with the tribe of Dan. The very name, Denmark is Denmark in Danish, meaning the mark, the border of Dan. And according to their own legends, their forefather was someone named Dan. They were named after Dan. It was prophesied by Moses that Dan would be in Bashan. Bashan was an area to the northeast of the Jordan River, in the northeastern area of the land of Israel. It was Bashan. Bashan was also known as Basil. Basil was a name later applied to Scandinavia, so we may say that indirectly it was prophesied that Dan would be in Scandinavia. And Dan in the Bible was a dominant tribe, of the northern section. He was dominant over Naphtali and Asher, and we find these tribes in Scandinavia, and the Danes in Denmark have been dominant over the other peoples of Scandinavia. So this was a characteristic of Dan. The tribe of Danes were also known as craftsmen in biblical times, and so too in conventional history. The Danes have been quite accomplished in many areas. The personality traits associated with Dan, the tribe of Dan, as we find in the hero Samson, included sarcasm and a sense of humor, one could say, an ironic, using the irony. We find this is a characteristic of the people of Denmark. Dan in the Bible was also associated with ships, and so the Danes are foremost maritime people in the world. One of the foremost maritime peoples. They own a good percentage of world shipping, and they've always been ship goers and entrepreneurs, pirates and fishermen and explorers. And even though they have a relatively small population, they have made their mark on the world's oceans. So this still was a characteristic of Dan. It was prophesied that such would be the case, and such was the case. It's also said that Dan would, another characteristic of Dan in the Bible is that Dan would name places after him. Also the blessing of Jacob to his son, the blessing of Jacob to his sons became the forefathers of the tribes of Israel. He described Dan, you see in Genesis 49:17, and Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels, so this rider shall fall backward. A serpent by the way, this has been explained to mean that wherever Dan went, he would leave a trail behind him, like on a dusty path where you have snakes. You can see in the dust where the snake has gone. The snake slithers on his belly. He leaves a trail in the dust, so too Dan, wherever Dan went, they would leave a mark or places named after them. We find in Joshua 19, the border of the children of Dan went beyond them, and they went out and they conquered a city called Leshem, and they dwelt in it, and they called it Leshem. And this city was named Leshem, and they called it Dan, after Dan, the name of Dan their father. So too in the Judges 18:12, when they went to a place and they set up camp there, it was called Mahane-Dan, the camp of Dan, after their father. And so too in Judges 18:29, when they conquered another city called Laish, they conquered it and settled in it, and there too they called it Dan, after the name of Dan their father. So this was a trait of theirs, and so too they called Denmark, the mark of Dan, after the name of Dan their father. So, and we have, as we will see, quite a lot of proof indicating that the Danish people, the people of Denmark, really are descended from the tribe of Dan. They are part of the 12 tribes, part of the lost 10 tribes. And this is something worth knowing. For some statistics concerning Denmark and other countries in Scandinavia, just to round up the general picture. Denmark, the capital is Copenhagen. It has more than 5,800,000 people. Danish monarch is Queen Margaret II. Sweden, the capital is Stockholm. The population is 10,400,000. But out of these 10 million, 2 million are refugees, non-Swedish refugees, many of them being Muslims from Syria and from other Muslim Islamic areas, and they comprise a good almost 20% of the population. So without them, there are about 8.5 million Swedes in Sweden. The capital of Sweden is Stockholm. Norway, the capital is Oslo. They have 5,400,000 inhabitants. Their ruling monarch is King Harald V. So Norway and Denmark have approximately the same population, whereas Sweden has a good portion more. Finland is also part of Scandinavia. Finland is also an Israelite tribe. We identify Finland with the tribe of Issachar. Finland is a republic. It does not have a monarch. And this was indicated, such was indicated according to rabbinical commentaries, such would be the case, and such is the case. The capital of Finland is Helsinki. It has 5,500,000 or more people. Another point is that we find in the Israelite times that the tribe of Dan was divided. The tribe of Dan settled in different areas of the promised land of Israel. The promised land of Israel stretched from the Nile to the Euphrates. Originally, the tribe of Dan, when they first came into the land, received an area around the present-day presence of Tel Aviv, Jaffa. They're still known called Gush Dan until this day, that area, and that's where they first settled. But then from there, a section of them moved out. They settled in Dan of the Galilee, and another section moved to the northwest, more to the north, and whereas northern Syria, southeast Turkey, an area called Cilicia, and there too they established a kingdom of their own known as Small. They're found in historical writings. They are referred to as the Dananu. They too were Danites. And also, we find that the Dan apparently conquered Cyprus, settled there at one stage, and they conquered other areas. And elements from Dan are also important in ancient Greek history. At all events, the Danish polity in the Upper Galilee was conquered in 800 BCE by an Aramaic, that is a Syrian kingdom. And the Aramaic king who conquered them, he left an inscription. And in this inscription, he refers to the house of David. And the impression is that he had conquered Dan, and maybe he had caused Dan to be destroyed, and the people from that area of Dan to have to move out. We're not sure, we're not certain about this, but the records are not clear concerning this matter. But all events, it sounds like from this inscription, where he mentions the house of David, that this area of the Galilee may have had a local ruler, and this local ruler may have been from the house of David. And such was the practice in ancient Israel and in other nations, that certain areas would take a junior branch of a royal family to be its ruler. And this may well have happened in this early times concerning a section of the tribe of Dan. They may have had a ruler from the house of David. We also find Danes coming to Scandinavia. At first they dwelt in what is now southern Sweden. At first, most of the Danish population, they came to Scandinavia. They dwelt in the area of southern Sweden, what is now southern Sweden. And Jutland, which is now a major portion of the country of Denmark, Jutland at that time was settled by the Jutes. The Jutes were also an Israelite people. The name Jutes means Jew, Judah. And the Danes, throughout their history in the peregrinations, their movements, they often teamed up, often were associated by elements from Judah. So this seems to be a characteristic of them. So one of these peoples of Judah, one of these offshoots of Judah, because most Judah remained with the Jews that remained when the Israelite tribes. When the Israelite tribes were together, there were 12 tribes, and they divided into two different sections. The southern section of the tribe of Judah and Benjamin became the ancestors of the present-day Jews, and after that, from the north, others came in from the tribe of Levi and from minority elements from other tribes. And they comprised the present-day Jewish people, ancestors of the present-day Jewish people. But apart from that, apart from people coming in and joining on and creating the Jewish nation, from the Jewish nation, from the tribes of Benjamin and Judah, there were offshoots that went to the north and became part of the 10 tribes of Israel. So even so, we can say that both sections had elements from the 12 tribes within them. The Bible prefers, or the Bible identifies the southern section as that of Judah, and the northern section as that of Joseph, or of Israel, or that is the 10 tribes who were separate. And this is that's how we'll keep it. But we just know that historically there were elements from both houses, from both parts and both sections. So one of the segments of Judah that was with the 10 tribes, what's known as the Jutes. The name Jute means Judah. Ute means Judah in northern dialects, of that time. Same word is used for Jews, and they were in Jutland, and they were, whereas most of the Swedes at the beginning, whereas most of the Danes were in southern Sweden at that time. Then in the 450s, 500s CE, the Angles and the Saxons and other peoples from the north, the Frisians and a whole collection of different nations took place, participated in Anglo-Saxon. The Angles and the Saxons invaded what became England, and they conquered it and settled in it. And the Jutes were also part of this invasion. And the Jutes helped conquer what became England at that time, and they also settled there. They settled mainly in the south of England. Some of them settled in the north. And according to Bede, they moved, and they moved altogether out of Jutland, or a good portion, or the majority of them did at least. They moved out of Jutland and they moved to England. Maybe there were climatic reasons for it, maybe there were other reasons for it. At all events, for certain reasons that were pertinent at the time, they moved out of Jutland and they moved to England. And when they evacuated Jutland, a portion of the Danes who were then in southern Sweden moved into it, and they took their place. And they settled there in place of them. Nevertheless, there were elements from from the Danes who also participated, along with other Scandinavians and Anglo-Saxon invasions of England, even at that early time. Later, or perhaps continuing from that process, or a different process in the 700s, in the 700s up to the 1000s, was what are known as the Viking invasions. The Vikings came from Sweden, they came from Norway, they came from Denmark, and they attacked areas in the west, and they settled in those areas. They settled in areas of Ireland, especially in eastern Ireland, but also in the west of Ireland. They settled in England on both the east and the west northern coasts, especially in the east, where Danes from Denmark were prominent. And they also settled in northwest France, and where the Normans, who came mainly from Norway, but also a good number of them came from Denmark. They created the Norman people, up into marrying, intermixing with the local Britons from Britain and the Alans and other people in that area, and they created the Normans who conquered England in 1066. And there had been people from the tribe of Dan in the British Isles before then, with the tribe of Dan in Ireland. We also, according to names and traditions, with the tribe of Don in Wales and in northern England, and Ptolemy also mentions a city named Brit-Am, which was in the north of England, which was actually later occupied by Danes from Denmark. But even before they occupied that area, there were apparently already people from down there. These invasions of the Vikings had taken place partly because a new group of people came in from Southeast Europe and what is now Turkey, and they settled in Scandinavia. And they settled there, and they created a demographic burden, one could say, and pushed out part of the coastal peoples who became the Vikings. And this is shown, that we have shown this, we've spoken of it. This is recorded in history and found also according to archaeological findings, and very recently DNA evidence has confirmed it. We believe in DNA only to a limited degree. We believe that DNA can change. DNA does change. It changes according to an environment. It changes according to different factors. Once it changes, it becomes hereditary, and it continues and it is fixed. But every now and again, changes take place. And when the changes take place, then they take place over a broad section of the population. They don't go from father to son and from one parent to the other, as usually occurs, but they change across the whole spectrum of the population. And this is confirmed. This is confirmed by empirical evidence and also by parallels to what we find in the animal kingdom. At all events, getting back to what we were speaking about, the Danish people, the early Danish rulers probably controlled all of Denmark, what is now Denmark, the Danish islands, by the 500 CE. Known kings exist from the 700s. The present Queen Margaret II, she can trace her lineage back to the earliest Viking kings. And she's the present ruler, Margaret II. 1397, 1397 CE, Denmark entered into a union, a combination with Sweden and Norway. They each had their separate kings, their separate rulers, but one king was over them. That was usually the ruler of Denmark ruled it. Denmark was the most influential element in this union. Sweden was frequently attempting to become independent of it, to break away, and Denmark would return and conquer it and bring Sweden back into line. Until 1527, when the Swedish king Gustav Vasa took control of Sweden, and he established an hereditary dynasty. Before then, in Sweden, each time a king died, a new king would be elected out of select families. Certain royal families or special families would get together and they would choose one of their members to be a king. After the time of Gustav Vasa in Sweden, kingship became hereditary. A similar process took place in Denmark, but it was sometime later. It took up until 1648 in the reign of Frederick IV when the same principle was established there and the kingship was made hereditary. Denmark converted to Lutheranism in 1536. Also in 1536 it entered into a union with Norway. And this union with Norway lasted until 1814, when Norway became independent and Norway took a member of the ruling Danish royal house to be its king. Up until this time, there was still Denmark still had control over areas of southern Sweden, and there was a long history of conflict between Sweden and Denmark over this area until in the end Sweden took control of it, and it was accepted that Sweden should have that area. Denmark also had was struggling with the German states until in 1864 Prussia allied with Austria. They defeated Denmark in a war and they took the areas of Schleswig and Holstein. They took the areas of Schleswig and Holstein. The ruling kings of Denmark have been known as Frederick and Christian. They go alternately. You have Frederick and Christian, then you have Frederick again and Christian. And that is a tradition that each king of Denmark, when he becomes king, he takes either name Frederick, Frederick the First, Frederick the Second, Frederick the Fourth, and so on. He takes the name Frederick. His son takes the name Christian. Then his son takes the name Frederick. That's how it goes. That is the tradition. In 1853, Prince Christian of Glucksburg, a German principality, became the heir presumptive, the inheritor of the throne of Denmark. His family had already been closely associated with the rulers of Denmark and with Danish matters, and he became king and became Christian the IX, in 1863, the first Danish monarch of the House of Glucksburg. And his grandson became Håkon VII of Norway. The Danish royal family in some way or another related to most ruling dynasties of Europe. An important king of Denmark was Christian X. Christian X reigned from 1912 to 1947. He was described as authoritarian. He strongly stressed the importance of royal dignity and power. But he was important and he helped to save Denmark. He helped to help preserve the dignity and the honour of Denmark during the German occupation, and he was important, as we will see. He was an important and impressive personality. He became a popular symbol of resistance, and he would ride through the streets of Copenhagen on his horse, alone without his guards, and he was a rallying symbol for Danish nationalism and Danish self-respect. And he was also friendly to the Jews in Denmark. The Jews in Denmark, after the Danish Lutheran Reformation of 1536, the Jews and Catholics were forbidden to dwell in Denmark. Over time this was relaxed, and the first a few Sephardic, that is Eastern Jews, Sephardic Jews who in Europe were often wealthy, were often very highly educated intellectuals, and they were well regarded. So at first Sephardic Jewish families were allowed to come into Denmark, and they were usually associated with the nobility, with the royal family somehow or another. And after that groups of Ashkenazic Jews also came and settled in the 1680s. By 1760 1,500 Jews were to be found in Denmark. Admission of Jews to the country was usually based on wealth. You had to be wealthy. My grandfather, father of my mother, he was also a Jew from Denmark. He was known as Leo Jacobi, or Jacobi. He's also known as Joseph Levi in Jewish circles. He was, and his father, he was brought up in Denmark. His father had been a violinist, the personal violinist to a king of Denmark. Probably Frederick VII. It may have been his son, Christian IX, the father of Christian X. And so my great-great-grandfather, in other words, was possibly, or probably according to the family, a violinist appointed to the King of Denmark. And this is something, anyway. The son of my grandfather is known as Leo Jacobi. As a young man he came to England, and he became an importer of silks and fine clothing, fine cloths, luxury goods, from France to England. He married my grandmother, who was a Jewess from Alsace on the border of Germany and France. It belongs to France. And he lived in London. And in the First World War, he served as a liaisons officer between the French and British forces at Gallipoli against the Turks in Turkey. After that, he returned to England and he brought up a family in London. In 1939, when the Jewish refugees were coming to England from Germany, he helped Jewish refugees from Germany settled in England. There's another connection we have with Denmark, is that after I came to Israel, there was a period when I lived in bearד, the settlement of bearד, which is in the south, near Rishon LeZion, somewhere between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, approximately. It's known as bearד. It's a small settlement. Now it's much bigger. It was small at the time. The rabbi of the township was Rabbi Moshe Menachem Jacobson, and he was a rabbi of bearד. He also founded a girls' seminar, a type of boarding school for girls of high school age, and he directed it, and he had founded it, and he was the head of it. And he was the son of Rabbi Benjamin Jacobson, who had been in Denmark. And he himself had been brought up in Denmark. At all events, his father, Rabbi Benjamin Jacobson, was in Denmark. He was in Denmark before the Second World War. He was a rabbi of a community, Jewish community in Denmark. Incidentally, he was also associated with Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe, who was an important Jewish Haredi philosopher and psychologist. He wrote books, and he is well respected and well known in Jewish Orthodox sources and in general sources. And he too was living at the time when I was there in bearד. He was associated with the Jacobson family. He was living there. And at all events, Rabbi Benjamin Jacobson, the father of my mentor, Rabbi Moshe Menachem Jacobson, Rabbi Jacob Jacobson, according to what his son told us, he was a rabbi in Denmark, in Copenhagen. In the morning, before the morning service, his practice was to walk around the park in Copenhagen for health reasons, for as morning exercise, one may say. And at that same time, when he would do his work, the King of Denmark would also be there, riding around alone on his horse through the park. And at first they would greet each other, say hello, good morning, and so on, and then over the course of time, they would stop now and again and have conversations with each other, and they became friends to some degree. And every year before the Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, the king would send Rabbi Jacobson a card of greeting. And this king was King Christian X. He was the monarch of Denmark. And when he was there, he was the king of Denmark when the Germans occupied Denmark in the Second World War. And there was an incident that was reported that the German occupiers of Denmark, they spoke of obligating the Jews of Denmark to wear the Star of David to distinguish them from the non-Jewish population. And the King of Denmark said that if they do introduce such an enactment, he would be the first one to put this star on himself. And he was a champion. He showed favour to the Jews in their time of trouble, and he is to be blessed because of that. So too the Germans occupied Denmark in 1940. In 1943, they decided to exterminate, ship all the Jews of Denmark. There were about 8,000 Jews in Denmark at the time, to ship them all out, and apparently to exterminate them. But the Danish underground and the Danish authorities were warned of this, knew of this, so they took all of the Jews of Denmark, or the overwhelming majority of them, and they put them on ships, and they took them to Sweden, and they arranged for the Swedish government that Sweden should take care, should should take care of these Jews for the duration of the war on behalf of the government of Denmark. And Sweden also is to be blessed because of this, because she agreed to do this, because actually the Swedes themselves had volunteered the idea. They had initiated the idea long beforehand, but only when it looked like the Jews of Denmark were about to be sent away and killed, was it put into practice. Apart from about 7,500 Jews were taken into Sweden, another 500 Jews were taken to Germany. The Germans did catch 500 Jews, and they took them to Germany. They put them into Theresienstadt. Theresienstadt was a concentration camp for German Jews. Most Jews who were sent there were killed. It was like an ordinary concentration camp as far as killing Jews were concerned, but its conditions up until the killing were better. It was used as a showcase to show to people from the Red Cross and so on that the Jews were being treated reasonably well, and they were treated reasonably well right up to the moment where they would be taken away and killed. As distinct from Auschwitz and other places where Jews would be just killed, whipped, tortured, wantonly, in the sight of everyone, right out in the open. And and in Poland the Germans could do that, and in Germany they did not do that. So in Theresienstadt, the internal conditions of the camp were such that it was possible to isolate sections of the population, and the Danish government from Denmark, even though it was occupied by Germany, it sent representatives there and had people come there, and it supplied them with food parcels, and it showed an ongoing interest in these 500 Jews that were there, so that the Germans did not kill them. And most of them survived until the end of the war. And statistically, 99% of the Jews of Denmark survived the war and were not killed in the Holocaust. And this was by virtue of the Danish government and this was by virtue of the Danish government and the Danish people. Now, and also the aspects of the way this was done, and the way Jews were saved, that reflect on the Danish character and on the supplies with the additional proofs that the Danes indeed are from the tribe of Dan, as we shall show shortly. A little bit more background, and then we'll get back to this point. There's no real anti-Semitism amongst the native Danes in Denmark, but Denmark, like does have refugees from Muslim countries, not as many as Sweden has, but does have some. And these have been responsible for terrorist attacks upon Jewish individuals and Jewish property. So this is a problem. But from the Danes themselves, no problems or no serious problems have emerged. The Jewish community is diminishing in numbers, so people either intermarry with the locals or they move out. There's about 6,000 Jews still in Denmark. Most of them are non-religious, secular. They have a few synagogues. The name Dan in Hebrew means judge. Dan is a judge. Dan is someone who judges things, who weighs things, who makes decisions. In the previous talk concerning the attributes of Dan, we found amongst the Danish people this characteristic of judgment, insofar as the Danes are critical and they judge things and they weigh things, and when someone tells them something they want to know why it's that way and why not another way. And they weigh everything together, and why is something different, why should something be different from something else, and so on. And this determines an aspect of the national character, and it helps them maintain a relatively homogeneous society with freedom of thought, but a conformity of behavior and attitude, which has both strengths and virtues, but it is a characteristic of the tribe of Dan, according to different commentaries based on the Bible concerning the attributes of the tribe of Dan. This is what we find in Denmark. So here too we find in this incident, in the way they handled the Jews in the Second World War, the problem of what to do with the Jews again when the Germans were threatening to, in effect, exterminate them, how to handle the whole situation. What an attribute of a judgment, of weighing things, of doing things according to a strict set order of how they should be. When the Germans first occupied Denmark, they first occupied Denmark in 1941. When the Germans first occupied Denmark, they were told there were Jews there. The Jews were afraid because everywhere the Germans went, the first thing they did was persecute and kill Jews. Everywhere the Germans went, the first thing they did was begin to exterminate Jews, or to take steps to persecute them, to downgrade them, to segregate them, to cause them to die off through overwork, disease, lack of food, and outright murder. And naturally the Jews of Denmark were afraid that this is what was going to happen. So many of them wanted to run away, wanted to go and hide straight away. And the Danish community, the Danish Gentiles, the populace of Denmark and the authorities, they came to the Jews and they asked them not to do this, not to create panic, not to do anything that would precipitate the Germans, that would cause the Germans, if they were planning anything, to do it sooner than they otherwise would. Not to spread demoralization, but to rely upon the Danes to handle the situation. And the Jews put their faith in the Danes in this matter, on the whole. And so, indeed, when the Danes got information, reliable information, the Germans were about to arrest all the Jews in order to take them away, in order to kill them eventually. The Danes, as a body, as an organised body, they hid some of the Jews around their local areas, and then they, on the set date, they all went to where the ships were throughout the country, and they paid the owners of the ships to transfer the Jews over to Sweden. The cost of this passage, they paid the ship's owners for this. Half the money came from the Danes themselves, from Gentile Danes, philanthropists, and another half came from the Jews. And the Jews were taken across the water, most of them taken over the water, some were taken overland through another ways, but they all came to Sweden. And they were deposited with a receipt, as if to say, in Sweden, and the Swedes guaranteed to look after them, to watch over them, to be responsible for them for the duration of the war. And it was understood the Swedes would do this, Sweden would do this, at the request of the government of Denmark. And this is what happened. So this shows an attribute of a characteristic of Dan, of order, legality, responsibility, doing things in an arranged, set, orderly fashion, being responsible, having responsibility, and if necessary holding others responsible for their acts, and making formal arrangements that work. This is an aspect of Dan. And not only that, we also find analysis of why the Danes did this, how they did this, what led them to act in such a way, such a uniform, organised, coordinated manner. A researcher, Elsa Brit-Am, Spontaneous Action, the Humboldt Journal of Social Relations, volume 13, she has an article on this matter, and she says that the attack on Danish Jews, the planned attack by the Germans on Danish Jews, was considered by the Danes. The Danes considered this attack, this persecution of the Danish Jews, to be an attack on fellow Danes. The Jews were considered Danes as themselves, and they were being attacked, and that this was against Danish law, and it was an abuse of Danish social and political principles. And so they acted to protect the Jews and to get them out of harm's way. Now it's obvious that other sentiments, other things were involved, other emotions and considerations went into this whole action. But it's interesting that this aspect of law, of legality, of judgment, as if to say, was a motivating factor, according to sociological research. And this in its own way is an additional proof that the Danes belong to Dan. The Danes are from the tribe of Dan. And this comes together with all the other proofs that we have in this direction. A few more words concerning Denmark in general. The present reigning monarch of Denmark is Margaret II. She's the daughter of Frederick IX of Denmark and Ingrid of Sweden. That is, she's a granddaughter of Christian X. Christian X was the king who was reigned in Denmark when the Jews were saved, and who Rabbi Jacobson, the father of Rabbi Jacobson, was acquainted with. The husband of the queen is Henry de Labo de Montpezat, a nobleman from France. He is a queen consort, as if to say. The queen herself, she is very keen on archaeology. She's been on several digs all over the world, Italy, Egypt, Denmark, South America. She's also an accomplished painter, an artist, and a designer. The support from the monarchy in Denmark is high. The heir apparent, the one who all things go on as they should, the heir apparent of Denmark is Frederick, Crown Prince of Denmark, the Count of Montpezat. He is married to an Australian citizen, or someone who was an Australian citizen, Mary Elizabeth Donaldson, and they have 4 children. The Kingdom of Denmark includes Denmark proper, as well as certain territories, the Faroe Islands, Greenland. According to the Constitution of Denmark, the king, the reigning monarch of Denmark, is in effect heads the government, but in practice he has no power. He is a figurehead, even though formally everything emanates from him. So in other words, they do have a king in a formal legalistic manner, but in practice everything is controlled and goes according to what the parliament decides. Denmark has 6 million people compared with, to Sweden with 10 million, Norway with 5.5 million, and Finland with also about 5 and something million. So that is all the Scandinavian nations from all this have the similar rates, similar levels of population. Denmark has a developed mixed economy. It's classed as a high-income economy by the World Bank. It is in all kinds of indexes of economic development and economic freedom and nominal gross national income and so on. Denmark is high. Denmark is one of the wealthiest countries on the earth per citizen as far as wealth per head of population is concerned. Also, Denmark is relatively speaking egalitarian. Distribution of income is fair. The differences between different wage levels, different strata of society is not great. It has a very high level of education amongst its citizens. It's the 4th highest ratio of tertiary degree holders in the world. Ranks highest in the world for the rights of workers. And so on, all the different indexes concerning the development and the well-being of the individual and wealth in general per head of population and enjoyment of life in Denmark is relatively high compared to any other country. The major industries of Denmark include wind turbines, windmills, making electricity and so on, pharmaceuticals, chemistry and medical equipment, machinery and transportation equipment, food processing and construction. It exports both goods and services. It is known for its wind turbines, its pharmaceuticals, its machinery and instruments, its meat and meat products, dairy products, fish, furniture and design. Denmark is a net exporter of food and energy. And Denmark has a good balance of payments. Denmark is in a good situation compared to most nations of the earth. And Denmark is benefiting from the blessings that the lost tribes were said to obtain, that were promised to Abraham, Isaac and Yair, and Denmark, influences the rest of the world more through its example, for its showcase example of showing the world how things could be, of a government and a population that works in tandem with each other, that worries about the good of its welfare of its citizens, and is progressive and livable. So this too is one of the aspects of Israelite civilization and how the Israelites were to influence the rest of the world. The British and Americans did it more through direct influence, more through imperialism, either economic imperialism or physical imperialism. They in their time, they elevated much of mankind. But Denmark is also doing the same thing, but in another way, through showing that it can be done and how it can be done. How each nation can take hold of itself and advance itself while being concerned for the welfare of all of its citizens and working in the interests of justice and judgment in general. May the Lord God of Israel bless you. Thank you.